Hello and welcome to the now regular IslesNation Podcast. I'm once again Pete Truskowski, joined today by once again Carey Haybrand, Mike Rankiewski. How are you guys?
Doing good, Pete. It's like we have a emergency podcast this weekend. It seems like.
Yeah, I had to call you guys into action. I got a lot to talk about. I have a lot of feelings.
All right. Well, let's get it out. Let's be your therapy.
All right. Well, let's see. Since we last talked, the Islanders played two games. They lost in overtime to the Washington Capitals on Thursday, and they beat the New Jersey Devils 1-0 on Friday, gaining 3 out of a possible 4 points. But I don't know. I left this weekend, and you'd think 3 out of 4 points would be seen as successful, but I left this weekend not happy with how I was feeling about this team. And for me, that's twofold. One, once again, I thought the Washington Capitals outplayed us for most of that game. And this is where I want to start it off. And from watching the 3 games we played with them this year, I just absolutely cannot see us handling them in a 7-game playoff series. I don't know what it is, but it seems like we'll play well, but then they'll just find a way to pull it out and win. Or we'll come out hot and then they'll just dominate the end of the game and we'll need a lucky bounce to tie it, and then they dominate overtime. Or they just dominate us from start to finish like they did in the first game. I don't know what it is. Ever since they beat us in the playoffs last year, it feels like that team just has our number, and they've had the whole league's number, to be fair, but when I see these 3 games we played against them, I just don't see it. Like, Islanders versus Caps, I'm putting my money on the Caps. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I do. Presently constituted, this team isn't going to beat Washington in the playoff series, and it's not. It's kind of a weird thing. I think I do agree with you that the Caps are kind of in their heads at this point, and that's something that I normally wouldn't say, about a matchup. But I think given the way these 3 games have gone, I think that's mildly fair to say at this point. This is kind of where I am. I don't think the Islanders and the Capitals, from like a average skill level, are too far apart from each other. But what the Caps have that the Islanders don't have is 3 game-breaking forwards and 1 game-breaking goaltender. And when you take Alex Ovechkin, Nick Backstrom, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Braden Holtby and compare them to, let's say, John Tavares, Kyle Oposo, Ryan Strome, or Brock Nelson, and Yaro Halak, I mean, it's not even close. And that's the difference right there. So if they don't make any moves at the deadline, which is, I think, a week from tomorrow now, I don't see how presently constituted this team would beat Washington in a 7-game series. But I will leave the caveat that, let's say they do go out and get an Andrew Ladd and Eric Staal. That does change the conversation a bit. I mean, obviously the Capitals are going to be more skilled no matter what, but it does even the playing field to the point where if this team, plays Washington evenly in a playoff series, they certainly have more of a chance to squeak a few games out, whereas right now I think it would be, 5, maybe 6 games.
I like that Carey brought up the deadline acquisition because on Twitter, Patrick Grady brings up the comparison with the New York Mets and the Chicago Cubs this year about how the Cubs swept the Mets in the regular season and the Mets went and swept them in the playoffs. Obviously, the Mets team got a lot better at the deadline this year, and they were a different team when they played in the playoffs, but I think Patrick's trying to say that playoffs are a different season, and you can't extract the regular season and make a direct comparison. I just thought that was an interesting comparison. I threw it in there. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean it is somewhat interesting, but the difference obviously in baseball and in hockey with the Mets, like you said, they made a lot of deadline moves, and the Mets always had the starting pitching, and I guess you could make the equivalent in hockey that if you get a hot goaltender, in theory, you could upset anyone in a 7-game series, and obviously Halak has that experience back in, I think it was '09 when he upset the Capitals and the Penguins with Montreal that no one thought they had a shot to do. So yeah, I mean they're in that respect there's always a chance, there's always a puncher's chance, but I think as both of you said, and I would agree completely, as it sits today, I don't think the Islanders have much of a shot in a 7-game series against them, barring some type of heroics from Halak or Grice, whoever's playing net that day. It's just the Capitals they're too good. They're loaded up and down, and as you said, Pete, they've beat us every which way. Whether it's dominating from start to finish in the first game, whether it's we played a very strong game and then let up have one mental breakdown in the defensive zone late in the second game, or last week where we played, I thought, a pretty good first period. I thought it was pretty even, and then from the second period on, it felt like Game 7 of the playoffs last year, where I did not think we had no offensive ability. We could not do anything with the puck. We could not generate anything, and I was absolutely shocked when we tied it up late. At no point in that game did I think we had a prayer to get a second goal. But so I think I agree with you. I think in a 7-game series, if you ask me today, the Islanders don't have a shot against them. I mean, I guess the only good thing is you could probably say is most teams are probably in the same position as the Islanders against Washington. They're just too good, and I know people will point to, well, they haven't done it yet. They always choke in the playoffs, but that's a different Capitals team. This is a completely overhauled roster. Yeah, they have some of the same faces, but they have not only obviously T.J. Oshie, Justin Williams, but Kuznetsov. Barry Trotz is a better coach. They're just a good team all around. I mean, you can't point to one thing that they don't do well. And in a 7-game series, it's going to be tough to beat them 4 times over a 2-week period.
I think this is the most favored I've ever seen a team in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the only really comparisons I see are the Penguins from like 2009 and the Capitals in 09-10, and that team was really good. And then Jarro Halak stood on his head and knocked him out in the first round.
Well, the Penguins that year, don't forget, the Penguins that year weren't, I think, in 09, they beat the Capitals. The Capitals were actually, I think, the 1 seed, and the Penguins were, I don't know if they're 2 or 3, wherever they were, but you're right, that we haven't seen in the Eastern Conference in quite some time a team that looks this much better than everyone else. I mean,
but they still could lose. I mean, look, the one thing that the Capitals don't have is a very strong possession game, and that is they're in a way, now they don't have as much great game-breaking talent, but we've seen President's Trophy winners that have run away from the league, struggle in the playoffs, ultimately because of that. Now, there's only 1 or 2 teams, and neither of them play in this state, that I could see taking them down, but it's certainly possible. But I think, and that's like kind of the main realization, or that I kind of took from that game, was that I was somewhat, in a way, depressed leaving that game, because I was there on Thursday, and it wasn't because I was necessarily disappointed by the result of the game itself. I was disappointed at the fact that we were completely outclassed for 40 minutes, and that's the second time this has happened against them this season. And kind of getting back to my first point, it's almost like it really sucks when you go into a season and you think like this team has a real good shot. And I know you guys disagreed in October, but you think this team has a real good shot to do something, make a big run, hopefully win a championship, and then it's now February, and the Islanders have struggled to separate themselves. We know they're firmly in a playoff spot. That was something that we expected from day one. But to see the difference in talent from them to Washington, it just reaffirms the fact that this team is not complete. And I think what makes it worse is the fact that, and I don't want to get into this again like we have, but it sucks because we're going to have a lot of turnover, and this might be the ceiling of where this core group of players is going to land, and that's that's a realization that I don't think anyone really wants to have. But every time we play them, I'm left thinking the same thing.
Back to Washington, I tweeted during the game that the Islanders need one of Matt Barzal or Ryan Strome or Michael Dal Colle to become their Evgeny Kuznetsov, because that's the main difference between the Islanders and the Capitals right now. I mean, you could say the Islanders have a 1-2 with Tavares and Oposo, and we know Oposo's a free agent at the end of the year, so even that's in the air. That you could kind of throw up against Ovechkin and Backstrom, but that third guy, Kuznetsov, man, he's something, and the Islanders don't have that third cog. And, of course, Braden Holtby just is probably the best goalie in this league. So I
I
mean,
mean, as much as we all love John Tavares, he's not Alex Ovechkin, and no, I mean that's not a slight on John Tavares. That's just the reality that there's no other Alexander Ovechkin in the league. I mean, what he does every season is off the charts. He's the best pure goal scorer this league has seen in probably two plus decades. And I mean, again, I don't think it's a slight on Tavares to say, but we don't have that. We have Tavares is a very, very good player. He's a franchise guy. He's an all-star. He's perennially he's going to be amongst the league leaders in scoring. Obviously, I mean, not this year yet, but it seems like every year you're going to see him in the top 10. He'll probably win an Art Ross or two before it's all said and done. But as much as we love the guy, he's not Alex Ovechkin, and that's also. I mean, and Ovechkin's playing on another planet right now. It seems like he's just such a force, and there's nobody in the league. There's no one guy I can see stopping him. And then you throw in Nicholas Backstrom, who's one of the best two-way players in the league. I think he's a little bit underrated on the defensive side. And then obviously Kuznetsov comes in this season and has elevated his game beyond, I think, what most people had anticipated so quickly. That's those top three. Then they sprinkle in all the solid role players they have. I think I just really think we have a ways to go to get that. We can try to get there with depth with 12 1 through 12. But I think Washington, if we're on the topic of Washington, I just think they're 1 to 12 because they're so top heavy as well and they're so good. Even their bottom six is solid. I don't know. I mean, yeah, they could be beat in the playoffs, like you said, Carey. Anyone could get beat, but man, I have a tough time when you watch them play to say, yeah, there's a team out there that over a 2 week span could beat them 4 times out of 7. I don't see it.
See, I do, though, because, I think ultimately, if you play them 50-50, it's not going to happen. I think that has been completely established with them running over the league. If you play that team 50-50, they will beat you just on power play, game-breaking talent, and goaltending. The team that figures out a way to control the puck and keep it away from them, which is how the Islanders won 3 games during the playoffs last year and how the Rangers beat them, the team that figures that out has a good chance to beat them. And the only 2 teams in the conference that I think, and honestly the second team, which would be Pittsburgh, I don't even know if they can. The only team I could see doing it is Tampa right now. And any other team playing 50-50, it's just not going to happen. So how do you bridge that gap, basically? The Islanders, in large part, have played them less than 50-50 during their 3 games. So bringing it back to the Islanders is, okay, how are there any acquisitions that they can make to get them to 50-50 or above 50-50 and try to mitigate the fact that they're not going to have that game-breaking talent that much? And that, to me, is the most important thing heading into the playoffs, which is because, at the end of the day, I feel like if this team goes on a run, they're going to have to play Washington at some point, whether it's in the first round, second round, or if they get the first wild card, third round. So how do you bridge that gap? Who's the guy that you bring in to bridge that gap and get you to a point where you're not basically relying on sheer luck to beat them? Or are you? And this just is what it is.
I think beating them would require a lot of luck. I mean, I don't see one player that's out there that's readily available. I mean, unless we're talking like PK Subban, who there's been a rumor that the Habs are listening, but I mean, let's get real here. We're probably not acquiring PK Subban. But there's just not one guy out there. I mean, even if you bring in Andrew Ladd or Eric Stahl, they're not putting you on the level of the Washington Capitals. I mean, they are 20 points above second place in their division. Like, that team is something else right now. I think you'd require 3 things to beat them in the playoffs. Number 1 would be an insane goaltending performance. Number 2 would be them beating themselves with their playoff history and their history of choking. I mean, as Mike said, Ovechkin in the regular season is on another planet, but last year John Tavares outscored Alex Ovechkin in the playoffs. So, I mean, he slows down in the playoffs. He's not the performer that he is in the regular season. And that whole team has not gone to the next level. And the third part would be a hell of a lot of luck. I mean, they are just that much better than everyone in the East. So, I mean, I don't know what Mike thinks about those 3 things, but you could add to that.
I agree a lot with what Pete said. I don't think there's one guy or two guys out there realistically that the Islanders can acquire between now and the deadline that are going to make them on the same level as the Capitals. As you said, you could absolutely close the gap. Whether it's Andrew Ladd, Eric Stahl, somebody else that we're not naming right now, can absolutely improve the team and take your chances. But I don't think at this point in the season you're going to find enough players to close the gap that much. But again, doesn't mean they can't be beaten. It's going to be tough. But as Pete said, if you get a goaltending performance for an incredible goaltending performance, if your special teams are clicking, and obviously last year our power play in the playoffs was horrendous, and that was everyone points to the injuries on defense as the reason why we lost, and you can make a good argument for that. But if we scored one or two power play goals at some point in that series, it's a very good chance we win in 7 or we win in 6, wherever the case might be. So it's going to take definitely, I think, acquiring maybe another player or two, having a very good goaltending performance. Special teams need to be absolutely on point, power play and penalty kill. And not to sound kind of morbid or anything, but you may have to hope for an injury for the Capitals, from one of their bigger guys. And not saying a debilitating injury, but something where maybe it's a nagging injury where something with Backstrom, he had a hip injury, maybe it kind of flares up on him and he's not 100%, and you could tell he's a little bit off. And he can't really play that two-way game and kind of be stuck on Tavares and force John to play 200 feet of hockey. So that's what I honestly think right now, if we're comparing the Islanders to the Capitals, which are the class of the East by far right now, I think that's the way to close the gap and potentially for an upset in the playoffs if you get to that point.
But is the point of acquiring a player, so let's bring this back a little bit. Obviously, this team's going to have to face Washington, but is the point of acquiring a player not so much to beat Washington, but to get to the second round? Are there more benefits of, let's say winning, not obviously beating Washington, but are there benefits here that this team hasn't had of winning around, getting more national exposure around the league, generating momentum for themselves in Brooklyn and in New York City at large? To me, that's the real point of acquiring a player, and not only
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. You don't go in. I hope they don't. I pray they don't have the mindset that Washington's so good, and if they're the clear-cut favorites, and if we only have say a 5% shot of winning it all, let's say the hell with it, and not even try to acquire any players at the deadline to help our position. Because, like you said, even one playoff round victory for this team, for this franchise, would be monumental. Considering
it would save jobs.
Absolutely,
yep.
Absolutely. And I, as we spoke about last week, there's probably a good chance that if they get knocked out in the first round, then I'll say we all think there'll be a coaching change, and there may be a shot of a general manager change as well. So there's absolutely reason to acquire players, even if it doesn't put you on the level of the Capitals, because second round, and hey, maybe if we don't have that team that beats the Capitals, maybe the Islanders win a round, and the Capitals, like you said, maybe they get upset by a hot goaltender in the first round, and you may not have to face them. So I would hope the organization would never look at it and say, well, they're so much better, so we'll wait for next season, and we'll just roll with what we have this year. If there's a player out there that they can realistically acquire to improve the club this season and have a playoff run this year, absolutely, they must do whatever they can to do that.
Yeah, I've said it. I think twice now, and I'll say it again. This is the last year this group of players is going to be together. It would be absolutely ridiculous to not give them one big shot to go for it and cement themselves a legacy. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can go back to being conservative and more long-term thinking next year. I'm totally fine with that. But for this 1 year, I think it's imperative that this team goes for it and really tries to make a dent in the league and establish themselves as one of those teams that's going to be in the playoffs every year, hopefully more than that.
All right. Well, we started this off talking about the Islander Capital game, and we expanded it to a macro level. But let's go back to the micro level here. And we're talking about the Caps as if they're some god team, but we took them to overtime. And that brings me to my next point. I've wanted to talk about this all season long. The Islanders went to overtime And all right, I watch a lot of hockey due to my degenerate ways, and I see overtimes across the league, and 3-on-3 overtime is unbelievably exciting. Like, you are sweating watching it, you are jumping out of your seat, announcers are yelling, and what's it called? You just 3-on-3 overtime is amazing, but when the Islanders are in 3-on-3 overtime, they go with 2D and 1 forward, and they look like they are playing specifically to get to a shootout, where they hope Franz Nielsen and Kyle Oposo could get them the 2 points. And that's basically what I'm trying to get at here is, why do you think it's a good idea? Why does Capuano think it's a good idea to go with 2D and 1 forward?
I mean, I think you alluded to it. I completely don't agree with it. I think it's a bad option, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I agree with your point that I think he's trying to get to the shootout for Nielsen and Oposo, who have had a lot of success in those positions, and try to get the second point that way. He clearly doesn't care about regulation wins as a tiebreaker. He obviously does not that he should, but he clearly doesn't care about the entertainment factor, which again, that's fine. I don't begrudge him for that. But they, as you said, they never have by going to this 1-2, this 1 forward 2 defenseman strategy. They never have the puck in overtime. They're playing defense essentially for the majority of the 5 minutes. They're chasing, and they're limited. They're a team that they're. If you're going to say they're anything, you try to think they're a speed team, or at least they have some talent up front. So yet they do a strategy that minimizes their strength, which is now we're going to have 1 forward. So whether it's Tavares out there, who, again, love the guy, he's not a speed demon. And a 3-on-3 is not, when he's playing with 2 defensemen, that's not a strength of his. There's a reason why every time he's on the ice in overtime, he's buried in the defensive zone. He can't get out. He's no one to pass to. They have some decent skaters on defense. Nick Leddy obviously should be a huge weapon. When Calvin DeHaan healthy, he should be a big weapon in overtime. And even Travis Hamonic is very good in overtime in those situations because he's a very good skater. But there shouldn't, Johnny Boychuk shouldn't be on the ice. Marek Zidlicki, I don't think should be on the ice in those situations. Thomas Hickey, God bless him, he tries. I don't think he should be on the ice in those situations. You have enough forwards out there between Tavares, Nielsen, Oposo, Strome, even Grabowski, whoever else you want to throw out there, Clutterbuck, where I think you have enough options up front, and it really it's mind-boggling when overtime starts and he goes with the 1-2 two defense approach. It's frustrating beyond belief because we're not going to have a lot of good chances to score, and we're going to be playing defense for 5 minutes and praying that we get to the shootout.
It doesn't make any sense. And forgetting the actual strategy, which I think you've outlined and make a lot of great points on, to take you back, the reason the Los Angeles Kings missed the playoffs last year was because they went 3-15 in overtime. Because overtime is a 50-50 coin toss. And to me, what he's doing is he's minimizing the advantages that this team has, which, to your point, speed, skill, mobile puck movers on the defensemen, at least 2 or 3 of them, and it's suffocating them. So now he's intentionally saying, okay, let's maybe get to the shootout because I think that we have a really good team, in the shootout, which historically is true. But this team is 4-3 in the shootout this year. And so basically, again, going back to that 50-50 split, if things don't break their way, and in certain cases they haven't, what's happening is this team, which could be, their overtime record last year was fantastic, and it was a big reason they kind of walked into the playoffs, all things considered. This team right now maybe took themselves off of 3 or 4 points, which is a huge difference in the standings at this point. So to me, the strategy is ridiculous. And just from a possession standpoint, the Islanders have been in the bottom 5 of 3-on-3 possession all season. I don't know if there's a large enough sample size to really correlate it to the 1 forward 2 defensemen, but I certainly think there's a good chance that that's a reason why. So to me, it makes 0 sense. It hurts their chances, and I think there's an indirect correlation with the fact that if the Islanders get a seed that they don't necessarily want and are stuck maybe playing Washington in the first round, that Capuano could unintentionally be self-sabotaging himself with it because, as we know from last year, a couple of extra points can make all the difference. And to me, over an 82-game season, you'd want to maximize the amount of points you can get, not potentially, suffocate yourself and hope for the best. So I just don't get it at all.
It's not even the 2D and 1 forward thing that really gets me. It's this guy's personnel decisions. If I remember correctly, right before the winning goal on Thursday, we had a combination of Josh Bailey, Marek Zidlicki, and Thomas Hickey out there. I mean, you are versing the Washington Capitals, who are probably putting out something like Kuznetsov, Ovechkin, and Niskanen. And you got Bailey, Zidlicki, and Hickey out there. I mean, you got to try and match them. I remember the opening night, and the Islanders went to overtime with the Blackhawks, and he tried. He put Tavares, Strome, and Leddy out there to start against Taves, Kane, and Keith. And I was like, this is going to be fun. I don't know if it's because we got burned on that one, and he immediately changed his mind, but ever since then, no matter what, it's 2D and 1 forward. I mean, Chicago's a tough team to go into 3-on-3 overtime with. That team has a lot of talent up front with Hossa and Panarin and Taves and Kane. But I feel like the Islanders took a penalty in that overtime because they were exposed on the back end and they lost the game. So I wonder if that has anything to do with Capuano's thinking. But one bad experience caused him to change his whole mindset. I'm just looking for something here.
Well, I mean, and who knows, that obviously could be true, but since then, they've played a number of overtime games since then, and I think it's fair to say, as Carey mentioned, that I don't know what the numbers say. I could just tell
2 and 4 for the season.
Yeah, but even beyond that, you said the possession on 3-and-3, they're bottom of the league. Which again, I don't know what the numbers say. I didn't look at the metrics, but I mean, anyone who watches could tell you that comes to 3-and-3 overtime, and we're basically grab your ankles and hope for the best. I mean, it's a tough, it's not fun to watch because the entire period, or the entire 5-minute overtime session, you're pinned in the defensive zone, and by the time they actually get out of the zone, they got to change because they're tired from chasing for the last 30 seconds. So yeah, maybe Pete, as you said, maybe by getting burnt the first game against Chicago, he tried to get more conservative. But, we're 57 games into the season now, and beyond obviously just the Islanders' overtime record or overtime play, there's a whole wealth of information out there already by other teams that, 2 forwards, especially when you have high-end or highly skilled guys, that's the way to go. Like Carey said, it's a 50-50. Go with your best. You should not, you shouldn't, when the other team especially is so loaded up front, go with your best. I mean, I can see lesser teams using 2 defense who don't have a lot of skill. Like let's say Toronto. I could see a team like them going to 1 forward, 2D, and trying to get to a shootout. That makes sense. Try to play more conservative because they don't have a lot of firepower up front. But when you're the Islanders and you're one of the top 10, they're somewhere in the top 10 in offensive scoring this season. They were near the top of the league last year. As Carey said, maximize your strengths. Don't put yourself in a position that you're not giving yourself the best chance to win. 1 point last season cost us home ice. So while we might say it's 1 game here, 1 game there, they add up. And last season, if we had Game 7 at the Coliseum, my guess doesn't guarantee anything. My guess is we play a hell of a lot better game, and I would take my chances I like my chances a lot more being at home for Game 7 than on the road.
Here's some numbers. Let's really toss these out. This year, the Islanders in overtime have a 40.9% Corsi, which is 27th in the league. Their Corsi events per 60 minutes is 58.2, which is 23rd in the league. Their Corsi events against per 60, 84.1, which is dead last. So if you want to know why the Islanders aren't generating offense and why they aren't winning in overtime, it's because they don't have the puck. And not only do they not have the puck, they are taking players who are not strong, relative to their competition in terms of skill, and placing them out there and basically getting pinned in the defensive zone and having the opponents shoot at will against them. This is essentially what's happening. The numbers bear it out. It's not Pete just being like, oh, Bailey, Hickey, and Zidlicki are out there, and it's a big reason why, the Islanders lost to the Capitals. This bears it out. This is a complete result of what Capuano's strategy is. And to me, at this point in the season, we're now approaching March. This team has left, we know, 4 points on the table in overtime, 3 more in the shootout. To me, you want to mitigate that going forward. Go back to 2 forwards, 1 defense. And honestly, if it was me, I'll tell you right now, I would start, and you guys may call me crazy, I would start overtime with 3 forwards, no defensemen, and try to win it early. And then go to a 2-1 split, because you know what? No team, unless they do it too, can compete with the offensive ability of 3 forwards and no defensemen. If you're going to trust your goalies by having them play in a system where they're getting the most shot attempts against in the league, why not go with 3 forwards and see if you can get a quick goal and then go back to the 2-1? To me, if you want to be, if anything, in overtime, you should be aggressive, and that's a way that they can, maybe get an inefficiency out of it as opposed to whatever they're doing now, which is just being inefficient themselves.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if that's what it takes, I have no problem. Oh, I would love to see them start 3 forwards. It's worth a shot. It's better than what's going on now. I think Oposo was on for the game-winning goal against the Capitals. Again, I like Kyle a lot. I think he's a good player. He's not a 3-on-3 player, especially when he has 2 defensemen on him, flanking him. He's better in a 5-on-5 game. He's a bigger guy. He's not the fastest guy. He's not great defensively. He tries, but he's just not very good in his own end. It's just what it is. So, you're putting yourself out there with guys who they need other players to maximize their strengths, and it just doesn't, it doesn't make any sense. So you want to start 3 forwards? That's fine. Take a shot. It's worth it, and you're right. You might get the other team on their heels. And if you put one of those forwards as Franz Nielsen, then it's not as big a deal. He's pretty responsibly defensively. He's not going to do anything stupid out there. You kind of can rely on him to get back. So, yeah, it's worth a shot. I don't think they'll ever do it, but I agree with you. I'd like to see it. I wouldn't mind it.
They're never going to do it. But Franz Nielsen playing the, quote, defense position, to me, is the perfect scenario. We know he can do it. He's done it before. He plays the point on the power play, so he's done it there. He plays shorthanded. He's done it there. To me, if you're gonna go that route, this is a perfect 2-way player who can put the puck in the net. He's got good vision, and he can play defense.
Yeah,
start out with Tavares.
I put either him or Grabowski on defense, honestly, at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
That would require a lot of trust in our goaltending to go with 3 forwards. So let's move on to our goaltending. And Jaro Halak, after I ripped him apart a few days ago with a great performance in New Jersey, the Islanders scored less than 2 minutes in, and he made it stand with a 27-save shutout. And Thomas Greiss got the Islanders a point in a game where they didn't deserve one against the Washington Capitals. So both goalies, once again, did their jobs. And did Jaro feel the pressure of Thomas Greiss really stepping up his game here? I mean, that was probably the best he's played in quite a few weeks. I mean, he made a bunch of nice saves, and he was just zoned in all game. And you have to wonder if the thought of Greiss getting the Capitals game, which most would consider the bigger game, if that lit a fire under Halak's ass and made him come out there and play the way he did. An interesting note, he did wear his mask from last season in that game on Friday. I don't know if he's superstitious or what, but that's just something to note. And also another point I'd like to make is Jaro Halak was very open about his dislike for the 3-goalie rotation the Islanders have right now. He was quoted in Newsday as saying it's tough to get into a rhythm when you have to share the net during practice. And, I mean, we know he probably feels that way, but I'm a bit surprised he went to the media with that and basically said that he doesn't make those decisions, but he doesn't like it. Kind of putting the Garth on the spot right there. But, yeah, Jaro with a good game. Grice with another solid game. What do you guys make of this goalie situation? We talk about it every day, and anything about Yaro's comments?
I don't think there's ever been a goaltender who's actually liked a three-headed monster situation, so I don't really blame him. I know a lot of people would say, like, oh, well, if he has such a problem with it, play better. But, I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that. Goaltenders like to get in rhythms. If they feel that practice is a good mechanism for that, then I can understand why this, would be somewhat of a deterrent for him. So, I don't really have much of a problem with it. To me, it says that he wants to play, and if he wants to play, then that's good with me. Same thing as what we said the last couple of weeks. This team's in a really good position with their goaltenders right now. Both of them are playing really well. It's a good, healthy competition at this point in the season, and what Thomas Greiss is doing is great. I mean, he's obviously inflating his own value. He's keeping the team in games. He's keeping Jaro Halak fresh, and what he's doing is also generating trust. Where if something does happen with Halak, whether it's poor performance or injury or both or whatever, the team seems to believe in him, and I don't mean just the players, but the coaching staff. And to me, when you have two goaltenders that you're comfortable putting it against any team, that's nothing but a good situation. So same thing as the last couple of weeks. I'm pretty satisfied with where things are at there right now.
Yeah, and I go to back to Pete's comment. I hope it lit a fire under him. It should. He, as you said, let's say the quote unquote the tougher opponent went to Greiss. If you're historically the number one guy, you know that in a back-to-back you're going to play one most likely, and the backup will play the other. If you've been the number one guy, you expect to get the tougher team. That's your job. You're paid to do that. He didn't get that. I hope it lit a fire under him. I'd rather that, and as you said, he played a very good game in New Jersey. I hope it did that, because that's what you want to see from your goal. You want to see him kind of that be upset that he was. Maybe he was a little embarrassed that Greiss, this career backup comes in, who's having a nice season, making a quarter of the money that he is, and all of a sudden now he's, people are fawning over him, and he probably hears some things in the media or in social media that says, oh, Greiss is the better guy, and maybe listen to IslesNation Podcast and listens to our fearless leader ripping him and things like that. So I hope it lit a fire under him, and if it did, good. And to his performance, that's what you want to see. He responded well. To me, goaltending is 75% of it is confidence. I mean, all these guys are talented, but I think a lot of times, if they're not feeling it, if for whatever reason they let in a couple bad goals, it just starts to permeate, and everything they do, they question, they get too mechanical, they overthink things. I think you see it from every goalie. They go through those spells where it seems like they're letting in one or two tough bad goals a game, and it's obviously the difference between winning and losing. The fact that he came out, and he didn't play a high-powered offense, and maybe that was done deliberately to get him a little bit more confident. But he responded well. Like you said, Pete, he made a couple of really big saves, especially in the third period. I think the one on Stepniak was his best one of the night, early in the third. He played well. And that's as we've said all along, it's a good problem to have. If this is the response they're gonna demonstrate, then I think we're in a good spot, and I think we'll be in a good position come playoff time. Because like Carey said, you have confidence with either guy. If someone gets hurt, or if someone's a little bit rusty or getting cold, the other guy can come in, give a lift, and the team knows they can get a win with that guy behind them.
I think I do want to point one thing out. There was a lot of conjecture online about what the effect that not playing against Washington would have on Halak. The one thing that Jack Capuano is extremely good at is that he knows his players, and he knows what makes them tick. He knows how to keep a room together. And to me, to your point, Mike, if this was a deliberate attempt to get Halak some confidence and kind of light a fire under his ass, then good on him. I mean, this is a perfect example of a coach that would understand what makes his player tick and knows him and knows how to get him back on track. And, from everything that happened over the weekend, you can't say he was wrong.
It's funny just that you mentioned that, because the more and more, and I know this is kind of going sideways a little bit, but with Capuano, he reminds me a lot of Ted Nolan in that way, where I think he's a good motivator. I think the players like playing for him. As you said, I think he has a good pulse of the locker room, kind of knows what each player needs to kind of get to that, hopefully that next level. And I obviously just think his in-game strategy is just atrocious based on a lot of the comments we made tonight. Pete, clearly going off on the 2-on-1 strategy in overtime, amongst other things. So, yeah, I don't want to sidetrack the conversation too much, but, you brought up that point, Carey, that, Capuano, he should get credit for, kind of knowing what his players need to get pushed and exceed. I do see a little bit of Ted Nolan in him in that regard, that they're not good in-game strategy guys, and if they had an X's and O's guys on the bench with them, I think they'd be a lot better off. But I think behind the scenes and just kind of getting the guys ready to play as far as pumped up and kept motivated, I think for the most part, that's a strength of Capuano's, and it was something very similar to what Ted Nolan was during his time with the Sabres and also with the Islanders. He was never known as a great in-game coach, but he had other good qualities. So I don't want to sidetrack it too much, but you brought that up. I at least wanted to point that out in somewhat complimentary fashion to Jack Capuano.
I think Ted Nolan's team would have more than 11 shots in a Game 7.
Ted Nolan was Jack Capuano's mentor, just for what it's worth. So, the
same hairstylist too, I think.
Yeah, the whole shebang. Capuano was here, during the time that Ted Nolan was, I think, at some point, and I've heard or read some stuff that he learned a lot from when Ted Nolan was here. So to me, that makes a lot of sense.
You're right, Pete, but maybe Ted Nolan would have got more than 11 shots. I didn't say they were the same. I just said they were somewhat similar qualities.
Yeah, I'll give Cappy credit for the way he handled the goaltending this week, but I'm not going to call him some motivating guru here. But whatever, we'll move on. And so news today from the Islanders: they placed Calvin DeHaan on the injured reserve list, retroactive to Monday. And Ryan Pulock is expected to join the team tomorrow in Minnesota. Finally, is this bad news regarding DeHaan? You guys excited to see Pulock? What do we make of this?
Well, it's remember when Strome came up and then the first thing Cap says, well, he needs more meetings. They didn't play that first night, so I would not be shocked if he gets called up, but he doesn't play on Tuesday versus the Wild, and they hold him out until later in the week, just because it seems like that's the way the Islanders have handled things somewhat recent past. But I don't know. DeHaan was skating the other night, or the other day, they said at practice by himself. So I think that's a good sign if you have a lower body injury. I don't know for sure if that could be nothing. Maybe he skated and the next day he felt terrible, and that's why now Pulock is maybe coming up. But I'm excited to see Pulock. Why not? It seems like a lot of other teams, they have not as much fear calling up their youngsters and kind of throwing them a little bit into the fire. So let's give it a shot. Let's see what we have, and this kid might be great. He might be terrible this early on, but from all accounts, he's a pretty good skater. He's got a good shot. I don't think he'll be overwhelmed on the offensive side. Defensively, we'll see. As long as he doesn't do anything too stupid, you can live with it. It's just you want him to. If he can contribute in some area, it'll be a positive. Even if he still needs work, which I'm sure he does in some other areas. But I'm excited. You want to always see if your first round picks come up at some point and hopefully contribute in a good way.
I'd be shocked if he played. 2 reasons. One, it seems like the DeHaan thing is precautionary, and there's some chance that he might play on Tuesday. The other thing is I have no idea where he's going to play, unless he plays on the left side, which I know Bridgeport has tried with him in this year, but I'm not sure that's how they're going to want to approach in the NHL. Just because as it stands right now, the team would have 4 right-handed defensemen in the lineup, with Pulock, Boychuk, Hamonic, and Zidlichky. So unless Zidlichky's getting scratched, I just don't know where he's going to play. And then the other reason why I think he's getting called up is because they literally don't have anyone left. Pelech obviously is hurt, and Scott Mayfield is suspended. So to me, this is kind of like, okay, well, we have this guy, and in case DeHaan can't play, we do need a 7th guy, so here he is. That's just my take on it. It's certainly possible that they do play him, and I'm totally wrong, but just the way, to your point about with situations with guys like Strome in the past, and even Pelech didn't play when he first got up here as recently as this year. I would be shocked if he played, but if he does, I'm super excited about it. I think that he is a really, really good prospect from everything that I've read about him, and I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
I can't wait to read reactions from Islander fans when Capuano says same lineup on Tuesday. I can't wait. I can't wait. All
Yeah,
right.
you know it's gonna happen. You know that's how it's gonna happen. You know it will.
Who's sitting?
You'd think one of Strader's or Licky. I mean,
Well, Strait
nah.
can't sit because he's playing left defense. So who's like? It's got to be Zadlishki.
Oh,
That's the only guy that I
We
can.
use that term loosely when Straight plays left defense. I guess, but yeah, I guess Zidlicki. I guess if you're gonna go with the righty-lefty matchup, then Zidlicki makes the most sense to sit for the game.
But are they really gonna sit a longtime veteran for Pulak?
They've been sitting him a lot lately.
Yeah, but for Strait.
No.
I mean, when Palick was up here, Zidlicki sat a few games. I mean, I think that we're past the stage where we're playing guys based on their salary and all that. I mean, Conacher got waived last year. DiPietro, ever since the Islanders bought out DiPietro, I think they haven't really lessened their team based on contracts and veteran status and that. It was definitely a problem in the past, but I think we're past that stage.
I
So
really
if
do
Capuano-
hope he plays though, because I really think it's about time we see what he has, and he is a top prospect, and he's got a lot of, from everything we've read from Brent Thompson, and we know about him as a player, he's got a lot of good attributes, skating, big shot, kind of exactly what this team needs in a lot of ways right now, especially without Dahan. So, I'd be really happy if they got him into a game, and if he could establish himself as ready for the NHL, would frankly answer a lot of questions going into next year, especially with an impending Travis Hamonic trade.
we got a lot of questions on the trade deadline, and we've talked about it the past few weeks. I don't really want to touch on it today because we'll probably do another podcast before the actual deadline. That'll be focused mostly solely on the deadline. But we got two questions that are kind of similar. One is, would you trade Oposo before the deadline? And two, what's the chance they deal Hamonic before the deadline? I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking 0 to none on both. I mean,
Yeah, that's the answer. I don't think there's anything else to it. I think 0 and none is that's the concise answer.
I will give a 0.01% on Hamonic because if they do get a last-ditch offer, at the last minute from a team that wants him now, maybe, but it would still shock me, personally.
all right, this proposal, Winnipeg offers you Ladd and Trouba for Hamonic and your second rounder next year. Who says no?
We don't have it, the second rounder.
Next year,
Oh,
2017.
2017?
Yeah.
I think I would say yes, but I could see the Islanders saying no because of the Trouba negotiation issue.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I think it's not it's I think it's pretty fair value, but I think the whole Trouba situation being up in the air, and I think that would might scare Goff a little bit into giving away his best asset for a guy who, even if it's remote, who could really be a pain in the neck down the line with negotiations and may command $5.5 to $6 million, which is over $2 million more than what Hamonic makes already.
Yeah, I just saw that on Islander Mania. I thought it was kind of interesting, so I threw it out there. But I'd agree. Trouba seems to be the name in Hamonic negotiations, but I mean, Staple alluded to it. That agent has a history of his restricted free agents holding out into camp. And as we know, Charles Wang and the Islanders don't do that. So,
But Charles Wang will not be the owner at that point, not the majority owner at that point.
But
Yeah,
I could see Garth Snow going with that. I mean, he did get a great deal out of the Brock Nelson situation.
yeah, so final point of the day. I know Carey's excited about this one. Friday, as the Islanders are beating the Devils 1-0, the New York Post publishes an article, and it says that the Islanders and Barclays Center are looking into exploring the mutual opt-out clause in their contract less than 5 months after playing their first game there. And, yeah, I mean, it took the Islanders' online world by storm. As we all know, the Brooklyn move's been scrutinized to to high heights. I mean, people like it, people love it, people hate it, people despise it, people have quit following the team, people have started following the team. I mean, you've heard players saying they love it, you've heard talks about them not wanting to commute, everything and everything. I mean, the Brooklyn move has been all over the place. I mean, personally for me, I mean, it's not my favorite thing. I mean, I've only been to 2 games this year because I don't feel like taking the train to games, but I mean, it's better than them moving out of state. But what do you just make of the fact? Is there anything to this? Is this a bullshit story? Or is there, I mean, you saw the Larry Brooks article last week about Tavares and them not liking Brooklyn, and now this article this week about the Islanders potentially looking to opt out or Barkley's looking to opt out. Where there's smoke, is there fire? Is that a thing here? Or is this just getting Islander fans' hopes up for page views and newspapers sold?
Carey, do you want to start or do you want me to start? Because
Oh my God.
I got some strong views too, so if you want to go, you can go ahead too.
The only thing that is on fire is every single New York Post paper, hopefully. Okay, there are so many angles about this that it's I don't even know where to start. I guess we'll start with this. The article referenced that the Islanders could explore moving back to Queens or Long Island. Where? Until further notice, Nassau Coliseum is not a viable option. There's just not enough seats and there's not enough suites. So that's one. Queens doesn't have an arena, and New York City, after building 3 in the last 5 to 10 years, is not building another one. So unless John Ledecky is planning to double down on his investment and build one himself, which he's not going to do, they are not moving to Queens. So that's one. 2, Barclays, who missed their revenue projections last year, got 45 free dates plus any playoff games this year from the Islanders. Are they really going to just throw that away? Because they've had enough trouble filling their arena as it is. Adele's not going there. Took a while for Springsteen to schedule a concert there. They're just not getting A plus acts at this point. And then if you look at it from a combined standpoint, so the Islanders are going to build, under this theoretical situation, they're going to build an arena in Queens or expand Long Island to, which Barclays owns the Long Island arena, to what? Compete with Barclays in Madison Square Garden? And likewise, Barclays is going to let the Islanders leave and build another arena to compete with themselves when they're having enough trouble competing with Madison Square Garden? The whole thing is completely ridiculous. I just see Barclays needs the Islanders needs Barclays. There's zero viable option at this point that would make me think that this is anything but complete crap. Not even withstanding the writer's credibility, and he's written quite a few things that haven't come to fruition as recently as within the last month. So, to me, the Islanders, for the first time in their franchise's history, are in a pretty good situation from a financial sense. They're making more revenue from Barclays than they have ever made at the Coliseum. They have the cable contract. They have all the general things that come with the NHL in terms of television deals and such. It would be absolutely ridiculous for the Islanders to basically take that away and for a prayer when they're in such a good situation compared to where they were. I guess the only other thing to say is in the article it referenced that the Islanders can't acquire any free agents. What? There's a hard salary cap in this league, and the Islanders are a handful of million away from it right now. So all it is reshuffling assets. Move out Grabowski, Kuhlman. You have enough money to sign Steven Stamkos if he wants to come here. This is not a money issue. This is a franchise reputation issue, and if the team continues to win, there'll be plenty of free agents that would love to come and sign and play in New York City. So this is just a complete pile of crap.
All right, so my turn. And I'm going to echo some of the stuff that Carey said because there's just a few things with the article that make me laugh. And some of the stuff I'm going to say comes from a position of what I do for a living, where I do my work for a living. One, the article talks about both parties are seeking a mutual breakout, essentially, a mutual opt-out. In any contract, if both parties want to get out of the contract, they can, and if they both agree they want to get out, they can get out of the contract. There's nothing that says, well, if me and Carey have a contract for services and we both say, you know what, this is a really crappy deal. We both want to go out and do our own thing. No court is going to force us to stay together because we both want to get out. So this whole notion of they're both seeking a mutual opt-out, that doesn't happen like that. One party may have an opt-out clause, and as Carey said, it's not going to be the Islanders, because if the Islanders have it, why, after all the years they dealt with Nassau County hemorrhaging money, and now they have guaranteed $50+ million payment a year, plus a cable contract, plus whatever slice of the pie they get from NHL, and whatever other little things that come in, why would they, the Islanders, now all of a sudden say, that's not a good deal? It makes zero sense. For the first time in probably 3 decades, the organization is actually profitable, and now they're going to say, well, we don't like because there's a 500 obstructed views. Well, you know what? That's too bad. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. And again, as Carey went into great detail with, why would Barclays, who's already struggling to fill the arena, essentially say, we don't want another tenant? Name me another building look, you have the Garden, which has the Rangers, it has the Knicks, it has the Liberty, it has the Westminster Dog Show, and then they have all their concerts. They have a ton of stuff over there. Go to Staples Center in Los Angeles. You have the Kings, the Clippers, and the Lakers. These big cities that have arenas, they have more. It's for more than one team because it doesn't make sense not to have it. So for Barclays, if they wanted to get out and say, well, we don't like the deal. Now, they could be upset because maybe they think they're paying too much money, and maybe they're trying to find some type of legal clause in there that gives them a way to renegotiate. Maybe there's something to that effect if you believe what the writer's saying. But in no way does Barclays want out of this, want the Islanders off the property. They need them. They need them to make money. If not, they have an arena that basically sells for 42 nights a year or 43 nights a year, whatever the Nets play, and whatever few concerts they can get. We essentially doubled their capacity for the year. And I think a lot of this, what gets me, and well, I'm more on the personal side, I will say. Well, actually, let me just, before I get to that, with Nassau County, I deal with Nassau County a ton, and even if you don't deal with them, you can read the articles. They have the financials dealt by a state committee or an agency. So the fact that they're not going to obviously build they couldn't build an arena several years ago. The referendum shot them down. Now they're going to build a new arena. I mean, let's be honest. The county has so many financial issues. They already put to a vote once. Now they're going to say, well, no, now we're different. Now we're going to build a new arena here. We see the error of our ways, so we're going to build something brand spanking new. If I'm the Islanders, if I'm new ownership, I'd say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to stay in the most profitable city in the world and make my money. But now, what gets me on a personal issue, and if I'm going too long, please stop me, but I read, on Twitter, on Facebook, even like message boards, there seems to be a decent enough section of fans that are actually happy. Islander fans that are they're excited about this. They're really excited that Brooklyn's failing. And I'm not one of these rah-rah Brooklyn guys. I'm not from Brooklyn. I have no, I'm happy the Islanders are in the area, but I'm not, whether it's Brooklyn, Queens, Long Island, it's all close enough for me. It doesn't, it's not that big a deal. But I feel like there's a section of fans that are so excited about this, and they want to go back to Nassau County. They want to go back to the Coliseum. They want to go back to their old barn. And they don't realize that the old barn could not financially support the team. And we went through 2 decades of garbage rosters because we had an arena that could not financially support a team. And now you want to basically go back to that arena. Why? Because you want to have your $10 ticket nights, and you bring in a canned good, you get a second ticket for free, and it upsets you because you have to go travel to Brooklyn. I mean, at some point, you want to be, and the same people who complain because the team was terrible for so long. You know what? If you want to have a major league roster or major league team in a big city, you got to make money. They're not making money in Nassau County. So if you want to go back to Nassau County and lose money and have a losing team, awesome. All the more power to you. But if you actually want to see a team that can actually compete, and we're starting to see the fruits of that competition and make some money as well, then you have to stay here. And yeah, it stinks that some people lost their home team, their backyard team. I get it, but their team the organization is in such a much better spot that's been over the last 25, 30 years. to see people kind of cheering this and hoping that this happens, it boggles my mind as an Islander fan.
It's
Sorry, I'm done. Sorry.
You know what it is? It goes back to this. Where are they going? The NHL for years tried to get this team in a situation in this area where they could be viable and be a positive for the league. All 29 other owners approved this move to Brooklyn because they knew what it could mean for the league. So basically, they're not leaving New York. The league is focusing on expanding right now, and you don't expand unless you have enough viable franchises where you're not going to have to just poach one, which is another reason why this guy who said that the Coyotes would be in Vegas at this point is wrong. To me, this is a situation where the NHL, for once, does not have to worry about the New York Islanders. No one is worried about the viability of the New York Islanders. It should be nice. It should be really, really nice because this team has the ability to be a top tier or just below top tier franchise in this league. And because the arena wasn't built for hockey and some site, and believe me, the obstructed seats are bad, and you're not going to get me to defend it, but it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't like it, don't sit there. The Islanders this year have generated more revenue, and this was true like 20 games into the season, than they did at Nassau County last year. And we're not done with the season. Playoffs haven't happened yet. So, why would you want to take them from a situation where they are so financially strong and place them in yet another unknown? I'm so personally tired of this uncertainty with this franchise. For once, this team has some actual stability. They're in a big city. Personally, I live in Westchester, and I'm able to go to games during the week. That would never happen if they were still on Long Island. So, yeah, it benefits me personally. But at the same time, they're also expanding their footprint. I go back to Grand Central after games, and there are a lot of Islander fans there. There's not a ton. It's not flooded. But there is a good amount of people that are coming from Westchester, Connecticut, Hudson Valley in general to go during the week to see this team play in Brooklyn. That never happened on Long Island. So just from like a holistic standpoint, it's not just the tangible amount of money that they're making from being in Barclays Center that's being a benefit to them. It's the whole situation of them being treated from people around the area as a legitimate franchise in the biggest city on the continent. To me, it would be absolutely ludicrous to want that to go away.
The last time an organization left New York, any professional of the four major teams, was the Giants and the Dodgers back, and I'll get the year wrong, but it's like 1955 or 1956, whatever the exact year was. And less than 6 years later, they put another franchise in the city, another baseball team with the Mets. So people don't move out of New York City. Teams do not. There's so much money to be made here. That's why you have 3 teams within a half-hour distance of each other in hockey. You have 2 baseball teams, 2 football teams, 2 basketball teams, because the city could support it, and they make money. That's what this is all about. You make money in New York City. You don't move out of New York City to go to Kansas City or to Quebec or to anywhere else when you have it right here. It makes 0 sense to move out of this area.
Yeah, but a formerly credentialed blogger told me that this spells the end of the Islanders in New York. So
I would say that whoever this blogger is, or credentialed or not, he doesn't know what he's talking about, because to say that a team is going to move out of New York City, it makes 0 financial. It shows you have no concept of how basic economics work and how teams actually make money. You make money being in New York. There's a reason why there's a ton of teams here, and that's why there's not 2 teams in Kansas City and 3 teams in Miami. Organizations want to be in New York City. Okay, people have to understand that. You make money here.
Explain to me why, if you were a National Hockey League owner, why you would approve the movement of a team from New York City to anywhere else. Because you know what? Any team that is in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, or in the NHL's case, Toronto or Montreal, has a huge benefit to the league. I mean, there is just no other way to put it. No owner would be like, okay, let's move the Islanders to Kansas City or San Antonio or you name it, because there is less money there, and owners like money. If the Islanders didn't move out of New York after they left Long Island, they were never going to move out of New York. you can come back to me 5 years from now if it happens, but I suspect that by the time this team leaves New York, we will all be dead. It's just not going to happen. This team is going to be with the Nets in Brooklyn or somewhere, at the Barclays Center or somewhere around there until the end of time, because it would be absolutely ridiculous for for a group of NHL owners to legitimately think it's economically positive for the league to move from a team from New York City. It's just not going to happen.
And then JT will be going bar down with his howitzers.
Yeah, he'll be in Brooklyn too.
God, I love myself. All right. Any final points, guys?
This is a big road trip coming up.
Yeah, no, we got 6 more games now. I mean, I think you have to win out of 12 points. I would love to get 9. I think 7 or 8 is probably more realistic. But again, the competition's not great. It's a road trip, so you always, people say you play 500 on the road, win your games at home, and you're in good shape. I think based on who they're playing, I think 8 points is not unreasonable here. Out of the next 12. But we'll see what happens.
So Minnesota has scored 5 goals in 4 straight games, I think it is. Did we stop that streak on Tuesday?
No, we all bet the over.
Oh, yeah, we got Brian Straight playing defense for us. He'll match up against Parisi's line. We're good. Just like he did against Ovechkin.
He did a great job against Ovechkin.
I think Ovechkin had about 45 shots on goal on Thursday, and I think he's still shooting the puck.
He was in double digits in the second period. So
it's like if you give a dog like a piece of meat every time 37 jumped over the boards for the Islanders. I think Ovechkin was started salivating on the bench. I don't care if he just came on or off, he was jumping right back on the ice.
My favorite play was on the penalty kill, where the puck rolled to the slot and Straight was there, and then he flailed at the puck, missed it, tripped over his own skate, then poked it out right to Ovechkin and teed it up on a platter for him right in the middle of the ice, while Straight was flailing with his stick going backwards, and then ended up on the ass as Ovechkin whistled it just wide. That was the most Brian Straight thing I've ever seen.
I mean, listen, the guy only has 510 career goals. I mean, who would have thought he'd be a threat on the power play with Brian Straight on the ice?
Isn't it amazing, though? Like, last point. Isn't it amazing that this guy has been in the same spot on the power play for 10 years and literally no one can stop it? Everyone knows what's coming. They can't stop it.
And even that second goal he scored, I know some people are like, oh, it's a softie from Grice, but
Yeah, I said that.
I can't call it a softie because I've seen Ovechkin score that goal at least 100 times.
I don't think it was soft, but this was my issue with it. Hamonic moved out of the way, and Grice was literally square to Ovechkin.
Yeah, but it's coming 85 miles per hour off and quickly he releases it. I don't know. I agree with Pete.
It's not soft, but to me it was a puck that could have been stopped. But regardless, it is
anyone else, I would say soft goal. Like Pete said, when Alex Ovechkin scores a goal like that, those aren't soft. Those are you just hope to get in front of them.
All right, so the Islanders are off tomorrow, and they're back in action on Tuesday in St. Paul. Kyle Oposo, Nick Leddy, Anders Liam, Brock Nelson head home. We love our Minnesota boys.
All members of the All Minnesota team.
According to NBC today, that's why I brought it up, Carey.
Well, we're good at picking Minnesota players and trading for them.
I mean,
except for Zach Parise. Oops.
Parise would look good on JT's wing, but that's for another day.
Too much money.
All right, that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening. Check us out on Twitter at IslesNation. And have a good day. Thanks for listening. Bye.